Hello and welcome everyone to our talk about culture and sustainability today. My name is Elisavet Papageorgiou from Intercult, and I will present you the third part of our Nordic Talks event, the future of our cities, challenges and solutions in the Nordic region and internationally, funded by the Nordic Council of Ministers and the Nordic Council. Nordic Talks is a series of talks and podcasts addressing the biggest global challenges. The aim of these events is to share inspiration on how to take action on sustainability issues in our everyday lives. Who are we? Intercult is an independent production and resource center established in 1996 in Stockholm. We are cultural producers, facilitating collaborations in international partnerships, in European projects, being a hub for international expertise, for cultural organizations, providing spaces for learning and sharing of change-making artistic practices, and engaging in European matters through our Europe Direct office. We are also partners in a Horizon 2020 research partnership. It's called SOS Climate Waterfronts Partnership. This project has been developed with the aim to improve solutions and strategies which might change the vulnerability of urban waterfronts through an interdisciplinary methodology involving both academic and non-academic institutions and organizations. The SOS Climate Waterfront fills the gap in the understanding on how urban and landscape planning, architectural design, culture, and technology are linked in and how they impact each other. A little bit more about the subject today. As sustainability consists of ecological, economic, and the social pillar, in recent years, culture has created a new dimension in sustainability. Why is culture and art important in urban development and sustainability of places? It represents a source of identity and innovation and creativity for the community, and it's one of us individually. But could the culture empower people through active participation in art and cultural activities? The purpose of our talk today is to make culture and sustainability more tangible. We want to inspire not only people in the cultural sector, but everyone interested in culture and the role of art in society. I'm very happy to introduce my guests for today. I'm starting, as I see you right now, with Fred Sanders, director of CPONH in the Netherlands. He's a civil engineer, captain of the Dutch team in our mutual SOS Climate Waterfront project. Germaine Sanders, an artist, urbanist, futurist, lecturer in the Sustainable Urbanism Design and Strategy, and also member of the SOS project in Netherlands. Ed Caroll, the community artist in Kaunas in Lithuania, convener of the Faro Convention Network, and member of the team that created Genius Loci, a civil society project that won a runner-up prize in the new European Bauhaus Awards under the category Regaining a Sense of Belonging. And Iwona Preis, our Iwona Preis, director and board member at Intercult and Smart Coop, Sweden, president of European Cultural Network, River Cities Platform Foundation, and board member of Kulturreservatets. So a warm welcome to all of you. I think it would be nice to hear more from you about your work, your focus and your perspective in culture and sustainability. Let's start with Fred.
Thank you very much indeed. I'm a civil engineer, but from origin, I'm a coastal engineer. And for me, it was surprising to do my PhD at architecture at later age. So I, looking at climate change challenges in Europe and over the world, my knowledge combines the coastal engineering and the urbanist area. And that makes my focus and interest more on adaptation than mitigation. And that's why I'm very anxious to learn about the results of our SOS Climate Waterfront project in all those cities. What possibilities, what are the challenges, what is the time scale, and what are the possibilities to work on a better environment for the people living in these cities and in these surroundings. So I traveled after my PhD. I did that in 2014. I traveled a little bit more in the world, also outside Europe, and it's very interesting that where cities for people are more a safe place socially and economically, in the meantime that these huge cities are growing fast, we have to not only implement sustainability, but we also have to change their way of life and the place they are used to. So it's very good to share this with good colleagues in Europe in this program. Thank you.
Germaine, let me hear some more from you about your work.
Well, my work, as is mentioned, is a combination of an artist life and being an urbanist and active in education, academic education, and a futurist, because I think climate change won't be guided from the top. Climate change and the effect of climate change needs bottom-up and changes, and they will have to be powerful. And that, of course, is culture per se. Governors do not understand culture. Governors are not interested in culture. Governors do not know the value of culture, but culture is going to make the change because the people need change of mind, they need change of life, and not because they have to, but because they have to understood. And to understand, the role of culture is most important. So the combination of my working field might sound a bit strange or maybe ambitious or arrogant or whatever, but this is the explanation, because it's this combination that will help changing for the better in times of climate change, because there's no one telling someone how the world can be saved. You know, we have to do it together. So we have to understand each other, and that through culture is the best and most pleasant way to understand each other. That's what I'm convinced of. So please feel challenged.
What about you, Ed?
Thank you very much for the invitation to be part of this conversation today. I'm sitting here in a Carthusian monastery from the year 1647, just outside Vienna in Mauerbach. Wow. It's now a center for cultural heritage restoration, and I'm here at a European Heritage Volunteers event where they're planning volunteering programs for next year. But I step back in history because I go back to 1647 when this building was built. It's an amazing building, and it still exists today, hundreds of years later. The Cistercians, I think, were kicked out by the Austrian Empire in 1700s, maybe early 1800s. And after that, it existed as a hospital. And after that, it existed for some years without any function. But one of the reasons why the monks got kicked out by the emperor was that they had no value. All they did was pray.
For the emperor.
They didn't produce anything. And I think that's an interesting question, you know, when we look at culture and art and the stress that is often put today on art being effective and being productive and having results and having impact. And I think it's a real question how we fall into the trap of thinking that what we do as cultural practitioners, artists, professional artists, non-professional artists, that in some way we fall into a trap that we have to be effective and productive and efficient. And maybe I'll finish up in this little introductory moment saying, I notice people have a window behind them. And here in the Carthusian monasteries, they are called box windows. So there's a window on the outside and a window on the inside. So they call it just a box window. Probably today, in terms of sustainability, the window that you're sitting in front of has maybe a double glaze vacuum or a triple glaze vacuum. And it's probably sold to you on the basis that it's highly sustainable and it's energy efficient. And it's a fact that the energy efficiency of this window, which is vacuumed, which is produced today and sold today as sustainability, will last maybe 10 to 15 years effectively. Whereas the energy efficiency of this box window that was produced maybe some 200 years ago is probably going to have a higher efficiency than the windows today. So I think that there's a lesson again in that very often what's sold as the message of sustainability and effectiveness and value and having value is often a value that's very much market driven and not that driven in terms of public value. So that's my little introductory comment.
What about you, Iwona?
Yeah, very interesting food for thought already, Fred. Thank you so much, and thank you, everybody. I think it will be a very interesting conversation. Well, my entrance to this world of culture and sustainability was actually the SOS project. We are all part, most of us are part of this Horizon collaboration between researchers, between architects, urban planners, and Intercult was invited as a culture actor. And the goal, the vision was that we will provide the channels for communication and dissemination of what the urban planners and architects in the project will do. And in my imagination, that was a good way of collaborating here. But quite quickly I realized that architects, planners gathered here, the researchers, that they are speaking about economic, social, and environmental planning, sustainability, but culture is not present. So that fourth dimension, which is now, or actually not now, it has been in the different papers, different policies for a long time, that it's true, that it's missing, that it should be there, that it's needed for giving the full picture and creating a full sustainable vision of the place for living for the future, be it a waterfront, a city, a street, or a suburb. And also another thing is that we are speaking about climate changes and the changing of architecture or adaptation of the architecture, the city planning to those culture, those climate changes, and how can we do it? It's not possible without engaging citizens, engaging communities, and who is best suited for creating this engagement. I mean, if we have a plan, it's only a plan, but somebody must feel for it, must think about it, must imagine imagine it. And I think that culture is the best way, or artists are the best people to create this contact with the communities, to involve our feelings, our emotions, and our creative imaginations, which is needed for changing of our lifestyle, and at the end, somewhere changing the way the climate is affected by our lifestyle. It's nothing else than that.
We're speaking about approaching people and the bottom-up participation in the sustainability city making. Ed, I know that in your project, the Genius Loki, you approach the community. Were they open to this, to express themselves, to join this project and suggest new solutions maybe? Are the people ready for something like that?
Well, I suppose I should just say a brief word of introduction about this community that I live in.
Yes, of course.
And I'd have to ask you to imagine back to 1922. I don't know if you can imagine what 1922 was like, but a whole group of people came from the countryside to find work in the city. And they created these houses, and the houses that they created were called country houses. They came to the city and they built these little wooden houses, country houses. And today in our community, there are let's say the grandchildren or the great-grandchildren of those people who came to this so-called city. And so there's something about the identity, you know, community is always something that is about one's identity. It's about where we've come from. It's about who we are. It's about how we feel about ourselves. And so in some sense, when you speak about community, you can't speak about they. It's us, it's we. We're not all the same. We don't all agree about the same things. We have lots of fights, but ultimately it's a we. It's like a bad family, if I could say that. So that's number one in terms of, that's where this project came out of, was a group of people that in 1922, I say that word not precisely historically correct, but just to give the sense of it, it's 100 years where people feel this sense of belonging to an area. That's a characteristic of our neighborhood. And then the second thing was a small neighborhood of 20,000 people with the municipality that just one day decided it was going to build a new road along the riverfront. And the resistance and the sense of horror and the sense of catastrophe that people felt to this plan for a new river along the waterfront was something that again picked up this sense of identity. Sometimes you don't think you're a community unless you're threatened. And then from 1990 and for 2 years afterwards, there was a lot of protesting and trying to resist this road. And then at a certain point, the community said, look, we have to stop protesting and we have to shift and start visioning our future. And this was the birth of the Genius Loci project. You know, it was a project to try and use our past, use our history, use our knowledge of the present, use our knowledge of the nature and the landscape to try and develop an urban vision for our neighborhood. So that's the background really of the project.
This is very, very nice, and I love the way that people are all these years they were there, and they want to do something. They want to get involved in that. And Fred, how do you approach people? How do you work with people?
Thank you. I listened with interest to what Ed told, and I can imagine how fascinating it is to be part of such a, may I say, small community. I live in a small village, and only 15,000 people here in this small village, so that's a small community as well. And that's why after my PhD, when SOS Climate Waterfront just started, I visited some huge cities like Hong Kong, and I went to Tokyo, 35 million people in one city, because I wanted to have answers how this small scale community base that I think we do need to have the change that also Germaine mentioned, to have a bottom-up approach in this climate change challenge. How does this work in these huge cities? Is there community feeling in the street or in an apartment complex? Or and what I found in these huge cities is that the community forming is not in the street and is not in the apartment complexes, but is in the green space in between. People come together there for Tai Chi, for communication, and maybe art expression is important. People go to places they think are important for their heritage or for their culture. But I found that in these huge cities, the meeting places where people meet and talk are not in the place they are working and they have activities, but in the open space in between. And that makes that helped me to get an idea that culture and art can maybe pillars under the communication of people in these huge cities. For instance, Hong Kong, I was fascinated. If most people are communicating in the metro, because the city arranged the best quality of free Wi-Fi in the metro. That's how they, the city council arranged that now 90% of all traffic is metro, because of the young people, they follow where the Wi-Fi is. But this Wi-Fi is also used very much for communication between the people that are sitting in this metro. And maybe they also do games and look to videos, but they also communicate. And more and more I'm searching what are the communication networks that we can that are used, not that we can use, but that are already in use by the people bottom up in the huge cities, because more and more people are moving to the cities. And what we learn, I think, Iwona, from SOS Climate Waterfront, is that most of the cities are on the coast, and they have the highest impact of climate change in the coming 100 years. So when I was for SOS Climate Waterfront 1 month in Lisbon, I tried to visit all these small communities in the streets, between blocks, at the beach, and I'm interested when Germaine is back from Gdansk, how her experience will be there. It's a good project, but we still have to combine a lot of knowledge together. Thank you.
How was it? Thank you, Fred. How was it in Gdansk, Germaine? How did you experience the public space there and the waterfront? How did you see it?
My dear participants, I'm still in Gdansk, and with a lot of pleasure. That's where I am. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, but I lost the conversation because it went in too many different directions, and so I got lost. And a lot of things that were said. No, yeah, well, so it's great in Gdansk, and again, we discover that solutions in terms of water, climate, and water change, climate change, and water, climate, and water fronts. Of course, we can build the world in different ways, but it's not about building. It's not about building. It's about change. It's about changing our environments. And yes, people communicate not only through the internet and Wi-Fi. People communicate only if they contact. the Wi-Fi and the screens. It's helpful and it's fun and it's great, but that has nothing to do with communication, let alone with change. That's what we experience again here. So we're here with a lot of people from all over the world. No, from all over Europe, from coastal cities in Europe, to be precise. And it's very interesting because discussions that we're having again are, how do we find common interest? How do we find ways to handle this change or to make change? And then sooner or later, culture is the topic. And it's because we have different culture. We all have different culture as a person, as a as a professional, as a character, as whatever. We have so many different cultures between us. And to understand, that has everything to do with culture. If you can ignore other people or other professionals or other stakeholders, it's because of power, it's because of politics. Fine, play the game. Change won't happen because that is tradition. Change will happen if there is a need to change. As Ed mentioned, if you have a common threat, all of a sudden you begin to understand how to solve it. Why? Because you have this common interest that you share. And you don't need to share everything. You don't need to share all life, everything you have, everything that's on stake. No, you share what makes you stronger. So in terms of climate change, if we're threatened, yeah, we have to find ways together, all of us together, and we need to understand each other. And there is where culture is coming in again. Understanding is through culture. And that is what we experience here in the beautiful city of Gdańsk, full of historical culture, but also full of the culture of finding new ways and finding how to survive and finding how to be strong, even if you're suppressed or even if there apparently are no solutions or are no futures. Yes, you'll find it together. And that again is culture, because culture makes you understand. But the thing that is needed is that you want, or you're willing to understand, and that you open up your mind and that you use your senses. And that is fun. You know, using your senses brings pleasure. So there you have it. The change will come. It happens actually right now here in Gdańsk with the people working together on 4 different locations. Of course, not only fun, but a lot of fun. And solutions will come. Not the ultimate solution, not the final solution, but different ways to approve, to find out, and to take one step further.
The interesting thing, Germaine, is that you are speaking about this broad definition of culture, I think. It's at least how I hear it, I understand it. The definition of that culture is about all which surround us, that it's a way of living, it's how we eat, how we walk, how we sleep, and so on. Then of course this is different in different country, sometimes closer like Gdańsk and I don't know what was the last place, Rome, but sometimes farther like Tokyo. But when I speak about as a representative of a cultural organization and working with artistic tools, I understand culture in this context, in this climate fight, or I mean, we call it with different names, the sustainable development. I think that the fight is mostly for climate changes, but I understand that the culture in my world is more using the artistic tools. It's a much smaller definition than this broad one, that we must understand each other because we are from different cultures, which architects actually often use the broad definition, but the smaller one. I am always interested in how can art then if we use this terminology, how can art be involved in building a new society, making those changes for more sustainable world? Theater, film, I mean,
yeah, if I may, I think we are not having such different perspective, because that's what I tried to explain. Art is about the senses, understanding through the senses, and it can be very small scale, like crafting, or like making puppet theater, or going into the street. So that it's the senses are involved. You use your whole brain, not only half of the language or the calculation. No, you use your whole brain, because that's what the senses do. They make the connection between the two parts of the brain. And culture is, as I understand, the culture is the way we live, the way we need, the way we live, and the way we can change our lifestyles, and etc. And of course, the artistic approach can be very helpful, because, like I said, I'm convinced that using your whole brain, and you can do that in many ways, and architects are trained to do so, because they are used to explain things that are not there yet, and they have to imagine what these things that are not there yet could be, what it could be, why it would work, how it would work, etc. But again, it's quite specific, because sharing that vision or sharing that imagination, that is the difference between professionalism, politics, or whatever, and art or culture or cultural art or whatever. So I think it's not that different, and I really agree that it's a very good way to approach these complex assignments and matter and topics, to have this artistic view. But the two should go together. So it's not one or the other. It's finally bring them together, and let's do it together.
If I may add, I did some research in my area here in the Netherlands, north of Amsterdam, and I asked the people, when there is climate change, what are you going to do yourself, and when do you look to government, to institutions? And then even in the Netherlands, where the threat of climate change and sea level rise is visible visually every day there, 50% of the people choose for, I rely on government. I pay for them, they arrange it for me. And the other 50% says, okay, I have to take some precautions. That's only personal. That's not still in the community being active to create that other way of life and that other society. So my fear still is, unless I agree with Germaine, that the challenge of the climate change impact is that huge that people cannot get it in their hands to start acting differently. And the more we tell how great and unsolvable this climate change challenge is, the less people will do. So we have to take care, because I agree, the change has to become from the bottom and not from the top, because from the top it will last not long. That we must cut the problem in pieces and make them ready for people to take them in their hands, and be positive about little activities and little projects, because like a chain, these activities together must create this more adaptive climate society.
Do you think that if if we talk about the general, as you said, if we talk about the general issue, people might not get very personal to this. How can the artists, do you think that the artists can approach people more in the personal level? I mean, I'm not going to save the world, but I can do something about it in my neighborhood or in my city, in my small or bigger city. Do you think that the artists, and how can they approach in this way? Maybe Ed?
Yeah, I'm a less artist than Germaine and others, but when I walk through cities, I like to use my eyes, and when I see all these arts on the walls of apartment blocks, and I see graffiti in the metro, and I see all kinds of expressions asking for attention, mostly more and more for climate change, I think that this kind of art helps youths to ask people and to activate people to take own responsibility. But I'm not an expert on that. I like to hear what others think about that.
Ed, what would you think about it?
Well, you know, also like Fred, I don't feel I'm an expert in this area, but I want to pick up on a few things that I think are important. First of all, I go back to something Iwona said about the role of art and artists and the role of universities. I think that this axis is really important, because I know in our Genius Loci project, like it's a partnership between a community organization and a university. And if I put it very simply, I think it's a partnership between the microscope and the practice. And I think this is really important. You know, the practice needs the microscope, and the microscope needs the practice, particularly in relation to this area of sustainability. The second thing, I think that's, again, it comes because artists have this premonition about the future, it seems to me, is that, you know, as I said, the monks got kicked out of the Carthusian monastery about 150 years ago. But so God is dead, okay? But I think today we have a new phenomenon, which is that the car is dead. And this has big implications, you know, and I don't know that we've imagined yet what those implications are. We still imagine those implications solely in the way of, let's say, that neoliberal view that each person is an individual. So each person gets their own bicycle, gets their own scooter, gets their own individual mode of transport. We haven't yet, I think, collectively really responded to this challenge that the car is dead and car parking is dead. And then the third thing, and this is maybe where I will pick up maybe a little variance, because maybe it's also important to acknowledge that we don't always agree about everything. But for me, the scale of the city is too big for the human being, for the human person. The scale of the city is too big. In philosophical terms, I really believe in this Bachelor idea that the human being needs a corner, needs to be underneath the table, needs to be in a little place. They don't work well in the big zone. So for me, I don't know how to respond to the scale of the city. So that's what I don't know. So in that, I would put that forward as a proposal to the microscope to help me as an artist understand how can I be in this scale of the city.
I am thinking about what we are what we are doing with artistic tools, that projects which we are working with at well, most of the culture sector is project based happenings, organization, whatever, and I think that culture is in this smaller meaning is offering a physical space for the artistic encounters, like performances, like place-related activities, which can be an inspiration, and that makes the place smaller. That's building. I mean, a small theater, a community theater. It's inside the community. It's inside of a smaller presence, and that's building an emotional relation to the place also. So you don't need to step out to the big street and to the big city. You can just stay very close to where you are, and culture helps, artistic tools helps to create a feeling of belonging and even an ownership of the place. Being it a local culture house, a community theater, a street, a suburb, a city, a waterfront, and then the earth. So my imagination is that you start from here, where you are in the small spot, but many small dots are creating a bigger action, because the climate has no borders. I mean, you don't need to build borders between small community and big world, right? And that's where, for me, culture comes in in those small spots.
Yeah, but maybe what is also important is that you belong to different communities according to your age, to your lifestyle, your phase of life that you're living, the way of life, the ones you share your life with. So I think if you consider urban environment, you have to be aware that every person living in a city, even small cities, but sure, big cities, they belong to, at the same time or simultaneously, in various communities. The younger you are, the more communities you belong to. And as a human, of course, you like to belong to a bigger thing than your personal, individual, little, small world. And therefore, culture, the low, well, small scale culture, like local initiatives and so on, can go together with big festivals that you like to join and go to, or some specific sport you are take part in, and then you belong to a different community, or special interest that you are interested in, and you go and visit places and so on. And all of that goes together and in the same time. And related to climate change, there we have it again. The climate change is not a threat. It's an opportunity to move things for the better, because the world is changing all the time, always has been. So the change that we are looking forward to, or that we have to respond to, or that we have to find out about, yeah, the way we find out is together and find ways. And through these type of communal organization or communal get-togethers or communal initiatives. And I totally agree that the cultural path is the best. But of course, it's not always the given. So sometimes you need to provide it, you need to stimulate it, and it can come from all directions, but it all starts with the awareness of the value of culture, with the awareness that you have a better life if you have a sensible life, if you can use your senses, or if you have freedom to choose to use your senses, yes or no. And there is where a lot of big urban problems appear, that people have no choices. They survive. And if you are in a survival mode, of course, culture is at the very, very end of the street. We all know this pyramid, the Maslow pyramid. It's only on the top that culture is a free choice, or can be a free choice. And the world will be a better place if culture is a free choice for everyone. So therefore, it's complicated, but it's also a big, big, big opportunity. We have to make people aware of the value of culture by doing it, by showing it, by organizing it, and by integrate it in our planning, in our design, in our education, on in the least, in our cultural life, locally where we live, etc. Because we all belong to many, many different communities, or at least we would like to belong to many, many, many communities. It should be a free choice, and it isn't.
If you had to give an advice to the people that are hearing us, each one of you, I would like to just give us a personal recommendation of a tangible action, something to take home with us, what would that be? Ed?
Well, maybe I did the wrong thing, but I wrote down before I started what my idea was. So it, and I still think it works out okay as an idea. It's not a great idea, but I think what I wrote down was, this is not about you, find your community.
That is nice. And what about you, Fred?
Yeah, I still believe in worldwide free internet. I personally found out that internet is also a place to contact. When my son is now around 30, but already when he was 10, we started on ICQ doing games, finding people in the world. Who's finding the first person on Antarctica to chat with, and who was the first? And we found out that there are a lot of people trying to communicate and have communities there. I believe that small communities, I agree with Ed and Germaine, in real life and on the internet, we must make a change of them, connect them to learn from each other and to feel each other culture with this challenge of climate change. So how far away of small communities this idea is, I think that free internet in the world will open a lot of communication and knowing of each other, and will make also the people more powerful, instead of that society institutes are getting more powerful because they eat from threats. And I agree with Germaine, we have to move with climate change and not fight against it. But a lot of institutions are telling us they will fight for us, and that makes us lazy. Internet will help, free internet. Thank you.
So technology can help. Iwona, an advice from you?
Well, I am not so sure that I have a tangible advice, like start to, I don't know, gather your garbage in a different way, which is an obvious advice for people today when you live in a small community. But I would like to relate to the participation, to engagement again. Well, not that tangible, but still, I think that we should, we don't have time. And this is a slogan used by a movement which was created in Sweden. The name of this movement is the Climate Sweden, Klimat Sverige. And this is the movement engaging people, regular people like you and me, in different activities, offering a space, a safe space for engagement in different ways. And I think that we should all engage, participate in this building up of a social resilience. Using art as a visualizing method can be one of the ways, but not necessary. It can be also education. But I think that participation is a way to engage, and to engage gives courage in a group to act, and it opens a window for activism. And I think that we shouldn't be afraid of using that word, that activism and active resilience is really important now. That combined with art, activism brings people together and strengthens relationships, leading towards a more collective acting. So small actions, connect yourself to a local movement, and start to act. Because we don't have time.
And Germaine, one advice from
you? I totally agree with Iwona, and but I have another recommendation. Please make as many gardens as possible, because the garden will educate children. The garden will bring you fruits and goods and flowers. The garden will bring places to meet, places to work together. So every possibility to create urban gardens, because in the cities, of course, it's more urgent than in the countryside, but even in the countryside, a communal garden can be really a joy. And it will it will arrange for us that we get better and fresher relationship with being part of nature, because that's what we are. And that's what climate change tells us. We are part of nature. We are not ruling, and we should be a better and a more trustful part of nature. Therefore, make gardens as many as possible and use them and be there and be happy and use all your senses and feel free and use your imagination. Never forget to use your imagination.
Imagination, yes. I think that we are speaking about the same thing, everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, find your community from Ed, make a garden from Germaine, connect from Fred, and engage from me. So I think that if I can summarize in this way, we are striving after the same.
No, I don't agree with the worldwide free internet, because I think we've been there. We've been there.
Connect.
Yeah.
Beautiful. This conversation has come to an end now. I would like to thank each one of you for your participation and sharing your thoughts, your experience, your advice. This talk will be shared in all Intercult's channels, social media and website, and it will be transformed to a podcast by nordictalks.com. We believe that this small event is part of something bigger, and Intercult manifests that culture makes a difference. So we are always glad to see that smaller or bigger cultural actions create meaningful change in the society. Thank you so much, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you, Elisavet. Thank you.